So welcome to last time it was 2/22/22. So this time it's 3/22/22. Welcome to the 3/22/22 Planning Commission meeting of the City of Escondido. Call to order, and I'd like to call it to order, and we shall rise for a salute to the flag. Roll call.
Chair Barbe.
Here.
Commissioner Dunn. Here. Commissioner Paul.
Present.
Vice Chair Rainey. Absent. Commissioner Maria Ramirez. Here. Commissioner Sarato. Absent. And Commissioner Whaler.
Here.
Minutes from the last meeting. Any questions or concerns about the minutes? Seeing none. A motion to approve. I hereby, go ahead, Stan.
I'll go ahead and move to approve the minutes of February 22nd, 2022.
And I'll second that. Roll call.
Chair Barbe.
Approved.
Commissioner Dunn. Commissioner Paul.
Yes, approve.
Vice Chair Rainey is absent. Commissioner Ramirez. Approved. Commissioner Sarato is absent. And Commissioner Whaler.
Yes, approve.
The vote is 5-0 to approve with 2 absent.
And Alex, do we have any written communications this
We do
evening?
not. No.
We do not. Adam, none from your square? Okay. Future neighborhood meetings?
Nothing on the agenda at this point.
Okay. Oral communications, are there any oral communications?
No, ma'am, not this time.
None at this time. All right, moving right along to the first item, the public hearing. Dutch Brothers Coffee, PL 220102 and PL 210400. First, before we start, are there any disclosures from staff? From the commissioners? No? Okay.
So Chair Barbe, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Ivan Flores. He's our new associate planner, and he'll be presenting this item here tonight.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Barbe, and good evening, Commissioners. The applicant, Coal Valley Partners, has submitted an application for a conditional use permit and major plot plan for the construction of a drive-through coffee facility. The proposal includes the demolition of an existing 3,650 square foot building and construction of a 950 square foot coffee drive-through facility with dual lanes and associated on-site improvements. The project is located within the general commercial district of the city's general plan. The intent of this land use designation is to support a broad range of retail and service uses, including eating and drinking establishments. As indicated on the colored map, the project is within the general commercial district of the East Valley Parkway area plan. The proposed use is a conditionally permitted use within this zoning district. The parcel is located near the intersection of Valley Parkway North Citrus Avenue and is addressed at 2365 East Valley Parkway. The subject site is developed with a vacant building that was most recently occupied by a dental office but has been vacant for some time. The property is located within an existing shopping center, which is anchored by a Vons, and is surrounded by residential uses to the north and south and commercial uses to the east and west. The drive-through will be designed around 2 dual lanes that can accommodate a total of 28 vehicles for stacking purposes. A total of 14 off-street parking spaces will be provided, which is consistent with off-street parking requirements for developments located in a shopping center over 3 acres. Access to the site will be provided via 2 existing driveways on North Citrus Avenue. As shown on the site plan, the project has been designed to ensure vehicles will not spill over into the public right-of-way. The proposal conforms to all the development standards of the Commercial General District and the regulations for drive-through facilities. And the applicant is proposing a contemporary design for the building. The building is one story and is surrounded by buildings of similar or larger height and massing. And the applicant is proposing a mix of cement plaster, stone veneer, and metal canopies. Multiple canopies and awnings are provided to avoid flat surfaces throughout the elevation as shown on these building elevations. Landscaping will comply with the city's landscape ordinance as proposed. The applicant is proposing a variety of shrubs ranging from 18 inches to 6 feet along the perimeter of the site. Additionally, the applicant is retaining existing landscaping adjacent to the public right-of-way. A condition of approval has been incorporated into the project's approval to require enhanced landscaping along the public right-of-way adjacent to the drive-through lanes, subject to the satisfaction of the Director of Community Development. Based on the analysis outlined in the staff report, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the Resolution 2020-03 approving PL 22-0102 and PL 21-0400. The applicant is present for questions or comments. This will conclude staff presentation, and we are available to address questions the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Appreciate it. And a very warm welcome to city staff. Thank you for the presentation. Does the applicant have any presentation or comments before we deliberate? Sure. Just please state your name and all of that.
I'm Braden Bernards. Nice to meet you all. I don't have any slides or anything. I think I've been covered the visual depictions well, but you're welcome to reference those as I go through. I'm with Coal Valley Partners. We are the owner of the project, as well as the developer and the applicant. We've owned the parcel for a few months now. First, thanks to Ivan for stepping in the last kind of month or two and getting us across the finish line. It's been really great to work with you, and thanks all for coming out tonight. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dutch Bros of the concept. They're a drive-through coffee shop. They kind of have a drive-through service and a large patio as well. They're out of the Northwest, and they're sort of growing in California. This is going to be one of the first south of sort of the Inland Empire area, so we hope it'll be very successful, and we trust it will be. They're very popular with youth as well, which I think is a fun feature. I don't know if any of you have children, but they're very big on social media with a lot of these stuff that's even too young for me to follow. But they have sticker days and a lot of this very promotional content that they really do well on the high school crowds. And they serve blended beverages, not just coffee, lots of energy drinks, and kind of a sort of more of a whole day spectrum of drinks, not just a morning rush. Yeah, and then on the site plan, we really laid it out sort of knowing we're drive-through, and Dutch Bros is very popular to really mitigate any off-site right-of-way issues with the drive-through queuing. So that kind of led our primary site design, and then from there we wanted to make sure the building's oriented toward the street. We think it has the tower component is facing the intersection, which is how we kind of wanted to lay that out. And then lastly, we ran this through a very exhaustive CC&R process with Vaughn's, as well as the landlord of the center, which actually just traded hands. So I think there's going to be some other improvements in the works, and we hope that this project, certainly I don't think our existing building is much of a wonderful looking building, and I think they're going to kind of enhance the whole shopping center over time. So we hope that all kind of come together and really make the whole center look well, but obviously we can only control our portion of it. So thanks again for the presentation. I'm available if you have any questions on the use or the layout or anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. According to our procedure, I guess, are there any public comments about this project? If you would be so kind as to complete a speaker slip when you're done, but you can come up and please introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Corinne Katerina. I'm a resident of the area. I'm not sure what these PL codes are, but I suppose I want to see if the cars are coming south on Citrus right there, is the landscaping going to be proper so that the cars coming south will not be backed up to turn into the drive-through? So starting from the upper right corner and traveling straight down, is the landscape on the top going to be short enough and pushed back enough so the cars turning into the entrance will be able to see rather than speeding down the street and then, oh no, there's 10 cars there? Does that make sense?
You're referring to from north to south there?
Yes,
And whether or not, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to clarify your question.
Is the, oh, I see, I'm backwards. Okay, thank you.
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Any other public comments? Could you please fill out a speaker slip just for the record, if you don't mind? Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll open it up to questions from the commissioners to the applicant or Ivan. Commissioner Paul.
Yeah, Ivan, I have only one concern, and I don't think it probably doesn't apply to this, but if you could pull up that same picture. So the cars that are queuing to the window are facing south, and that's on the right-hand side of the road, so to speak. So citrus traffic is going to be facing, citrus traffic is going to be on the side of the shrubs going north, facing that. And we have a Starbucks right now over by Broadway and 78 at that intersection. That's pretty new Starbucks. And they have the same phenomenon there, that the traffic on Broadway is facing the line of cars in the drive-through. And in the Starbucks, there's an elevation change, and the cars in the queue line are about 3 feet higher than the traffic. And so all those headlights waiting in line shine into the cars that are coming down. And the shrubs don't block that. The shrubs have never come in there. So I went to this site, and it has the same traffic facing each other, but the elevation doesn't seem to be different. And you've said that the landscaping is going to stay there. So that would just be one concern, is that the headlights don't shine in the oncoming traffic. And maybe you can go to the Starbucks at Broadway and you can see what I'm talking about. And maybe their landscape isn't what was envisioned when that drive-through went in. But I think this is going to be a great addition to this shopping center, and I don't think that that's going to happen. But I just want to bring that concern up. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiler?
Yes, I actually had the same concern as Commissioner Paul, with lights spilling out onto Citrus. In the same situation where the lights are coming in different directions and people are, they could become confused. And if their shrubbery doesn't come in, or if it doesn't accomplish what is intended with the shrubbery, can we impose an additional condition that at some point in time, that if that shrubbery doesn't come in, and attempts have been made to enhance the shrubbery, if we can actually put in a small wall? Because I do think it's a safety issue, at least in my opinion. But I don't know how we would condition it as such. I guess we could figure something out if the commission so chooses to go down that pathway. But I do have that same concern.
So, Interim Director Feinstone here. So it's very difficult to do something where you condition a project at a future date once occupancy has already been granted. There are conditions that require that they provide landscaping to director satisfaction based on the need for that screening. I know it's something that I've been routinely and keenly aware of. The commission can opt to require a screen wall at this point if they so desire, but I think that the landscaping, if we do a good job on making sure that we stay on top of the applicant to install what has been approved and to make sure that what's approved is significant and sufficient, I think that would do the trick.
Does staff, because it is a conditional use permit, and at some point down the road, a lot of attempts have been made to make sure that screening, the proper screening occurs, could staff actually on their own impose a requirement that they put the wall in, so that we're not doing it as a commission, but does staff have that ability, and would the applicant have to abide by that?
So it would be basically potentially a violation of the conditions, which would have to come back to the decision-making body for reconsideration.
Okay, all right, and I'm satisfied with that. I had another question, and maybe this can be answered by staff or maybe the applicant. Is there something in the code that requires a certain amount of stacking? I mean, we got 28 vehicles here, which is a lot, which is great, especially if you're that successful that, yeah, you got to have stacking for 28 vehicles. I hope you're very successful. But the question really is, the number of stacked vehicles, is that in city code, or is that just by design by the applicant because of the success that they've seen in other locations?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Owen Tunnel, Assistant City Engineer. We do have a requirement in the code, and it's considerably less than this. And for similar uses, we've required 15 stacking for 15 vehicles before they start to interfere with the either the center or the public right-of-way. So at 28, they're considerably above that. And I think it's because, they have, their operation is solely or almost entirely drive-through oriented, and that's what they've experienced the need for. So we feel pretty good that they're so far above. I just give you an example. I think the in and out on West Valley Parkway has, I think, 13 or 14 spaces before they start to impact kind of the private drive in that center. And so 28 spaces at that in and out would have you out in the middle of Valley Parkway. So I think we're pretty comfortable that 28 is plenty here.
Thank you. Yeah, I have no other questions.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Dunn?
Yeah, I do have a few questions. I am familiar with that area on Citrus because I drove by that area many times, but I can't picture where exactly location. Are you inside that mall right next to the Vons, or is that right by the convalescent home? I mean, it's hard to. Okay. I've noticed that occasionally that area could be pretty congested in the afternoon hour when, right now school it's not an issue, but occasionally I do see the congestion for that. I am wondering, have you conducted any kind of traffic study to prevent any type of congestions going on in that area? Because if I'm looking at correctly at the plan, on the right-hand side of Citrus Street, Citrus Street is convalescent home, senior, assisted living home somewhere, and then the school right south of Valley Parkway. So there's pretty congested. So I'm just wondering if you have thought of traffic survey or any type of survey in that area.
Yeah, the assisted living I think that you're speaking of is actually one block to the south at Bear Valley in Citrus. And Citrus is kind of bottlenecked there, and it is impacted a lot more by the junior high and the elementary schools that are nearby, and even the high school not too far away. The applicant did have a traffic engineer prepare a traffic memo in that they studied it to the point to show that the number of trips didn't require a full study. While the use does generate, I think, about 780 trips in a day, in a 24-hour period, this type of use, a great number of the trips are what they call pass-by. So they're cars that are already in that area and then going to pick up a drink, not somebody specifically leaving their home and going to this area specifically for that use. So it cuts it down, the number of trips, considerably. And so it didn't show an impact to the streets there. So.
Thank you. My last question. What is your plan for hire for staff within the city of Escondido, or are you bringing somebody outside? Because we are also looking at the economic growth in the Escondido as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. And just full disclosure, I'm not involved in the coffee operation, so I don't do any hiring directly or anything. But Dutch Bros typically hires between 50 and 60 employees per location, mostly on a part-time basis. If you can go to the site plan real quick. They hire so many because the sidewalks that run alongside the drive-through lanes are filled with employees with iPads taking orders and often delivering drinks before people get to the window, and then cars can bypass out the window, which is kind of how they do their speed of service and really facilitate a high volume. So their staffing numbers are fairly significant, and just by nature of their brand, the majority of those employees are high school students. Okay. They'll bring in they have a really unique company structure, but they essentially only promote from within, and so they'll bring in sort of a regional manager that worked his way up or her way up from a store, maybe in California, maybe somewhere else. But then everyone that's hired, there's no franchising, there's no sort of, I'm going to buy into this concept. To become essentially a manager, you have to start as a barista. And so I think it's compelling because there's real sort of paths to a career for maybe non-college track or parallel to college track youth. So they do a lot of hiring. And I actually just heard in Victorville, they had 600 applicants for a new store that's opening in Victorville next month. So they have no shortage of getting employees like some of the other brands do, which is really exciting.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions. Thank you, Chair.
I have a question, but I have a question for our attorney first. I just want to make sure for us to have a conflict, it's within 500 feet of any.
You mean your living space?
Yes, living space.
You live within 500 feet of this location?
No, I just want to make sure.
I'd have to look at that. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
I do believe that it's 500 feet is where you would have to at least disclose that you've got that potential conflict.
I'm close by, but not that close, but close enough that I'd still want to check. Okay, so barring that, my question is, have we looked at any plant or traffic calming efforts or part of it was with the plants, I think, that were mentioned earlier, but there is a lot of walking traffic, and so I would just recommend looking at that. There's a lot of school traffic that was mentioned earlier, and me being familiar with that area, there's often, I've actually had a personal experience where I've been running and cars don't stop when they're coming out of the shopping centers, and so almost kind of making it unsafe for any pedestrians. So that would be my only recommendation, is traffic calming, especially with just the volume of kind of what could be expected in a locality like this.
Do you have any comments about that?
Just that when the project comes through final engineering, we'll be looking at site distance, both for vehicles and pedestrians at the driveway entrances that the project fronts on, and just the ped ramps and the improvements there, that they're up to ADA standards. So.
One of the things I've seen is just like coloring the driveways, or finding other kind of simple ways to create those traffic calming features to make it safer for pedestrians. So thank you.
Okay, other Commissioner Dunn?
Yes, I apologize. It just triggered another question for staff. I'm wondering, because right now we are pushing for organic composting, even at home, businesses. I'm wondering if this, how do they discard their coffee? Because I'm looking at Starbucks and I see sometimes they put all of their coffee giving out to the general public, for, to take home and however that is. So I'm wondering what would be the plan for discarding all of their coffee, because it looks like they do have a huge, they're expecting a huge crowd, so that would be a lot of coffee ground.
Sure. I can't speak for the applicant and what their, or the facility and what their plans are, but the city did last year pass an organics waste recycling ordinance, so they would be required to abide by that. So at minimum, it'll be composted in whatever manner that happens. I do know what you're talking about at Starbucks. You can go and get grounds for your garden, I think is what they call it. So
Yes.
yeah, so
I
I'm
like
not
it.
sure.
It's very helpful for the earth and for the garden, for my herbs, and which is good. And so it's organic stuff. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff or for the applicant? I just have a few comments. I guess this is really the wave of the future. So the marketing tells you that drive-through is really the only way the best way, at least their model, to, the reason why I ask is just from a climate change perspective, having all those cars idling there just makes me crazy. So recognizing that, hopefully the landscaping will be helpful to both buffer as well as for the community, as well as for I just think about all the high schoolers who are running up and down taking orders and delivering coffee and what they're breathing. But anyway, that's just an observation. And that was all I had, actually. Others are covered. So if there's no other questions, motion?
I don't think there's any combustion engine cars that go to that location.
No. Okay. Does someone want to make a motion? If there aren't.
I would like to make a commotion.
A commotion.
Commotion. Okay. There you go. I'm going to make a commotion now. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Okay. And I'll second.
Okay. So the motion is put forth and seconded for a conditional use permit and major plot plan for the drive-through coffee facility. Roll call.
Chair Barbe, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn? Commissioner Paul?
Yes, approve.
Commissioner Ramirez? Yes. And Commissioner Wheeler?
Yes.
With Vice Chair Rainey absent and Commissioner Serrato absent, the vote is 5-0 to approve.
Thank you. All right, and thank you to the applicants for coming out and talking with us. Okay, the next, that's it for public hearings, current business, the Climate Action Plan, the annual monitoring report, PL 220075. And I guess Veronica Morones is going to make a presentation.
Good evening, Chair Barbe, Planning Commissioners. My name is Veronica Morones, Senior Planner, and I'll be presenting the first annual Climate Action Plan Monitoring Report. For anyone who may be unfamiliar, the Climate Action Plan is often referred to as the CAP and will be done so in this presentation. Before we begin, I just wanted to note that there is a correction to the staff report for this item. On page 5, the third sentence in the first paragraph states all of the measures with a, quote, high ease of implementation, end quote, have performance metrics, adaptation actions that are underway or complete. This should actually state, quote, 4 out of the 5 measures with a high ease of implementation, end quote, instead of all. All right. So the request before you this evening is to receive the first annual monitoring report documenting the city's implementation of the Climate Action Plan for the 2021 year. To provide context, the city initially adopted a Climate Action Plan in 2013 and then subsequently adopted an update to that 2013 CAP in March 2021. The CAP's greenhouse gas reduction targets aim to reduce GHG emissions by 42% below 2012 levels by 2030 and 52% below 2012 levels by 2035. The CAP outlines 9 implementation strategies that include performance metrics for reducing GHG emissions and 2 resiliency strategies with adaptation actions. All 11 of these strategies and their corresponding performance metrics adaptation actions are listed in Attachment 1 of your staff report. It should be noted that this is the first annual monitoring report since the adoption of the 2021 update to the CAP. So this slide shows the CAP strategies, 9 of which are implementation strategies, numbered 1 through 9, and 2 are adaptation strategies, 10 and 11. The city has implemented measures to some degree within the strategies shown in bold on this slide. This means of the 11 strategies within the CAP, only 3 are yet to have any implementation begun in the first year since adoption of the 2021 update. It is important to note that the CAP identifies staff implementation costs, ease of implementation, and implementation timeframes for strategies 1 through 9 only, which will be important for later in this presentation. In addition to the 11 strategies just mentioned, there are 4 overarching implementation items discussed within the CAP. These are establishing a climate commission, hiring a full-time sustainability climate coordinator, receiving an updated GHG inventory from SANDAG, also known as the San Diego Association of Governments, and annual monitoring of the CAP. Of these 4, 2 are underway or implemented, hiring a full-time staff member, and annual monitoring. So this monitoring report is broken into the following qualifiers for assessment. It should be noted that the 4 overarching strategies just mentioned in the previous slide do not have numbered measures or performance metrics as we delve into this. So the CAP has 9 implementation strategies and 2 adaptation strategies as mentioned and displayed on this slide. Within these strategies are nestled numbered measures. Further within the numbered measures are performance metrics for strategies 1 through 9 and adaptation actions for strategies 10 and 11. In total, there are 153 performance metrics and adaptation actions listed within the Climate Action Plan. This slide shows the annual monitoring table for the CAP, which is listed under Attachment 1. At the top in the blue are the column categories. Status shows where the measure is in the implementation process. Measure identifies the corresponding measure number. Title provides the title and description of the item. GHG reduction potential provides the amount a measure or performance metrics would reduce emissions in metric tons of CO2 equivalent. Responsible agency denotes who is responsible for the implementation. Implementation time frame shows the time frame over which strategies are to be implemented. CAP implementation date is the specific date identified within the CAP for implementation. Staff implementation cost is the level of cost to implement these strategies. And lastly, ease of implementation identifies the level of effort required for implementation. As mentioned earlier, each strategy has a set of measures within it. So here we have strategy, this is strategy 1 as an example, and below it is the first measure, T1.1. I'll be referring to these measures as the numbered measures throughout this presentation. And within measure T-1.1 are performance metrics. The status of each metric or action is listed in the status column, and those in yellow are not yet implemented and have a CAP implementation date of 2020 or 2021. So if the item is highlighted in yellow, it means that it has yet to be implemented, but was targeted for 2020 or 2021. Those shown in green are complete regardless of the CAP implementation date. So overall, there are 31 numbered implementation measures. Again, these are the T1.1, T1.2, et cetera, from strategies 1 through 9 that the CAP identifies implementation timeframes, staff implementation costs, and ease of implementation for. The CAP does not include implementation timeframes, staff implementation costs, and ease of implementation for those measures identified again under the 2 adaptation strategies, which were numbered 10 and 11 on a previous slide. So this slide presents a visual of the implementation measures within the CAP across all implementation timeframes, not only those slated for completion in 2020 or 2021. And with regard to implementation timeframe, 10 numbered implementation measures have begun or completed. So 10 out of those 31. This slide shows staff implementation costs associated with the CAP implementation measures. And as shown on this slide, those with a low staff implementation cost have been completed than, say, with a medium or high. However, there are still 2/3 of those low staff implementation costs yet to be implemented. For monitoring measures, this slide shows the ease of implementation for CAP implementation measures. More measures with a high ease of implementation have been completed or underway than those with a low or medium. So these are the easier to implement measures. So this slide provides an overview of the 2020-2021 specific CAP performance metrics and adaptation actions. So for the CAP implementation dates of this last year, there are a total of 17 performance metrics or adaptation actions. Of these 17, 7 are either completed or underway, and 10 are yet to be implemented. So in other words, there are 10 items which were slotted for 2020, 2021 that we have not yet begun. Overall, the CAP, again, contains 153 of these actions, and as of this report, we've implemented or begun about 25% of those. So let's talk about achievements. Since the adoption of the CAP update last year in March of 2021, the city has achieved some notable milestones. In particular, in October of 2021, the city became a member of a community choice energy program, the Clean Energy Alliance. This is a step toward achieving one of the city's key reduction measures with the greatest GHG reduction benefit. Additionally, in December of 2021, as Interim Director Feinstone mentioned, the city adopted an organic waste and recycling ordinance. This aids in another key reduction measure for the city regarding waste diversion and reduction in GHG. The city also achieved its goal of retrofitting 750 streetlights with LEDs by 2035, as we've already retrofitted over 1,000 in just 2021 alone. So looking ahead to 2022 actions, there are a total of 9 performance metrics or adaptation actions identified for completion in 2022. As of this report, we have begun or implemented 2 of those 9, with 7 outstanding, and that's in addition to the 10 outstanding that we are still yet to implement for the 2020-2021 year. So next steps include reporting to the City Council on the annual monitoring report, and that will be slated for the April 6th City Council meeting. And with that, that completes staff's presentation, and I'm available for questions.
And you might add what you mentioned to me earlier about the...
Oh, yes. It is worth noting that as of today, we were informally told that the city has received the highest score of the Climate Action Campaign scorecard for climate action plans for the 2021 year.
So all that work last year paid off. Many, many hours we spent in reviewing those. Thank you so much, Veronica. Appreciate it. Thoughts, questions, comments from commissioners? Commissioner Paul? Sorry.
Yeah, hi, Veronica. So one of your slides talked about the ease of implementation. If you could pull that one back up again. You had low, medium, and high for, there you go, that one. So I'm a little confused. Does low mean that it's easy, or low means it's not easy?
So low means it's not easy. So the ease of implementation is high. It's an easier to implement item, so we have completed more of those.
Okay. So I might suggest you change that terminology or something so that it's not confusing to people.
That is the terminology within the climate action plan. So that is a good food for thought note that we can take into any potential update.
Okay. And then also, it would be very interesting to see a graph. I'll wait till she finishes. To see a graph with the greenhouse gas emissions, what the target is through the 2050 versus 2035, and where our climate action plan would put us, and then where we are against all of those things, if you know what I mean. Like we have a goal that beats the long range plans, but maybe we're not there, or we're ahead of it, because not just the number of measures, but each of those measures has a different amount of greenhouse gases. So you don't know by just how many measures whether these are the measures that get us a big bump or a little bump. And so if you had a graph that showed those lines, that would be very, very easy to absorb, visually. I'm a visual person. All right, thank you very much. Otherwise, great report. I love this format. Thank you. I like almost everything I've seen you do so far.
Adam?
Yeah, so I believe that the Climate Action Plan document itself has a graph typical or similar to that, and I think what we're looking at is potentially to get something that's drawing the line of where we're at right now, right? Okay, yeah, and as Senior Planner Morona has stated, we did knock off the largest GHG reduction implementation measure already, so that was a huge win. I think the CCE joining the Clean Energy Alliance.
Community Energy.
Yes, Clean Energy Alliance, I believe is the name, right? So joining that or that group, I think knocks off 40-some% of the total GHG reduction goal. So
Right, and I believe in the plan itself, there's a schedule for actual reporting of the actual rate of emissions or how we're doing, so to speak. So I think there's actually a schedule inherent to the plan as to how often that will happen. And I think it might be every, I want to say 2 years, but I don't know, I could be wrong.
We are supposed to receive updated GHG emissions inventory from SANDAG in this next 2-year period, as in 2020 to 2022. So I'm not sure. We're supposed to be reporting annually on the cap itself, the implementation of the cap.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
Yeah, Ms. Veronis, thank you for the update and everything. Really good. And I know that when we were looking at the cap and all the implementation measures, we knew that this was just a large effort that's going to be needed to implement everything. So my question is, with the items that haven't quite got implemented, in the 2020-2021 period, is there an estimate on, or even a schedule on when you might be able to implement some of these things? Because you got those you got to implement, and then the new ones that are kind of piling on. and really, it's not that I'm looking for an answer of, yeah, we're going to do this tomorrow, but I'm just kind of curious as to how, at this point, how do you play some catch up while the rest of this is still kind of piling up?
Well, I think a key part of that is that I have been brought on as staff to handle the implementation of the Climate Action Plan. So I think I'm nearing my 6 months and getting this ball rolling. But that is a great question, and it's definitely something staff is aware of trying to coordinate those efforts to ensure we don't fall behind and that we can, in fact, efficaciously implement our Climate Action Plan.
Okay, thank you. And good job, by the way. I know this is a lot of work, and just as a commissioner, I appreciate the effort.
Commissioner Doan.
I do have a couple questions. Well, thank you for the presentation. It's very, very nice and very well organized. I understood everything. That's pretty amazing. It took me a while to read the CAP plan initially when we first met last year, and it took me a while to get kind of well-rounded and understand what's going on. I have 2 questions. So the colorful report is very helpful, so thank you so much. My other thing is that I'm looking at the strategies, and I've noticed that there's a highlighted area. It said not yet implemented, which understood, but then it said the implementation date is 2021. So are we working backward, or what happening with that? Because there's a few items on here that I had questioned with.
Sure. So as mentioned, there are 17 items of these performance metrics, adaptation actions that are slotted to have been completed by 2021, and 10 of them we have yet to complete or implement. So if you see a highlighted row in the attachment 1, it means that we're highlighting that has not yet happened, and so it's the reporting to our commission and to our council at a future date that these are the items that we need to make sure those bodies are aware of. And so if we need to reprioritize, if staff needs direction, that's some information, data points for our decision makers to help us focus our efforts.
So to follow up my question, what would be the plan of action to bring these items forward and have a timeline for it?
Well, I think in some cases, we have work plans, right? There's the Planning Commission work plan, and I believe that typically aligns with certain efforts, certain things such as drafting ordinances that might be called out in the climate action plan itself. In fact, just as a note, a lot of the items that weren't implemented in 2021 were ordinances, and I was not here for the full 2021, so I don't want to speak too much to that, but I know as we staff up in the planning division, there will be more capacity for us to take on writing those ordinances and catching up on those.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Thank you. Good job. And this is really exciting. And I think I have more notes than I have questions, but I'm like, how is this someone's full-time job? And maybe you need 3 more people to support this effort. But obviously in 6 months, a lot has been done. So that's really appreciated. My only note is I'm wondering what community communications, if any, if there's thought to like even celebrate the wins that already have happened for climate, for the work that's been related to the CAP, and maybe just a suggestion to share that. And I know it's going to be brought to council, and there's other ways where people can learn about it, but then there's also kind of breaking it down in layman's terms and really kind of making the information or these small wins accessible to those in the community. But this is really exciting work, and this is, one of the bigger reasons I wanted to get involved is, things like this. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. I just want to echo all of the accolades that it's a really great presentation. It's very easy to understand and follow along. I appreciate the prioritization questions about how you're going to cover backlog of actions. There's certain ones that I would be particularly interested in helping with respect to getting engaged with communities, but I'll follow up with you afterwards on that. But generally, I have a few minor notes, but nothing worth really mentioning here. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Really good work.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Paul.
So you brought up the community. Is the community action group still meeting for the climate action community action group? Are you doing presentations for that?
I don't believe that they've met since since the CAP was adopted last March.
Really?
It was. I think the effort was initially undertaken in as a way to help guide some of the discussions and points behind the climate action plan preparation. It's not to say it's not an opportunity to get back out there with the public and let them know, hey, that would be a good group to engage with as far as this is where we're at and the like.
Yeah, I think it fits your request perfectly, right?
Now we have so many tools to get information out there, and like social media, or just like even doing spotlights. I think there's a lot of work being done in Escondido, and folks don't know about it because we're not as vocal, and maybe these are opportunities and kind of tapping on to free resources. But also, folks tend to get engaged when they're riled up, but everyone knows engagement needs to happen all year round. So this is a way to keep the conversation going.
As one of the founding members of that community advisory group, I could certainly recommend that we convene that group once more, if nothing else, to share where we are and then solicit some feedback, because that really is a good group. I think some of them have sort of wandered off into other pursuits, but I'd be happy to help marshal that group to get together.
Great, thank you. And we did send this agenda packet to the interested parties list for the climate action plan. So we did locate that list and made sure that everyone received an email notifying them of the annual monitoring report.
Yeah, and I also say that because I know there are certain members on that group that would be similar to what I was suggesting, that would likely be wanting to get involved in very specific actions to help out, basically. So, okay. Great. Other thoughts, comments, observations? All right, moving on to your next job. Let's see, what do we call it here? The Housing Element Annual Progress Report, PL22-0104.
Yes, thank you, Chair Barbe. Once again, good evening, Commissioners. I guess we do audio record these, correct? So my name is Veronica Moronis, Senior Planner, and I'll be presenting on the 2021 Housing Element Annual Progress Report this evening. So the request before you entails receiving the city's 2021 calendar year Housing Element Annual Progress Report, documenting the city's progress on implementing the 5th cycle housing element. So to provide some background, the APR, the Annual Progress Report, details the city's progress in meeting its share of the regional housing needs. This information is broken down by calendar year. This report is for the calendar year of 2021. The APR is state mandated and due by April 1st of each year. So this 2021 APR is due in less than 2 weeks. The APR reports on housing units submitted and approved through the Planning Division, housing units issued and finalized by the Building Division, and provides information on the city's surplus land, certain grant funding, and the city's housing element progress. One important item of note is that only building permits issued count toward meeting the city's regional housing needs allocation. This regional housing needs allocation is commonly referred to as RHNA, and you may be more familiar with that term. For the 2021 calendar year, a total of 433 housing units received issued building permits. As shown in the highlighted column on this slide, a total of 107 units in the very low, and moderate income levels received issuance of building permits in 2021. The remaining 326 units were in the above moderate category. Included in the 433 housing units is the Valley Senior Village project, a 50-unit affordable housing development that received local funding. Additionally, city staff conducted updates to the city's density bonus and accessory dwelling unit ordinances to ensure compliance with state law. The city also adopted a hotel conversion ordinance. The city received a total of 7 short-form applications for mobile home rent review, of which 5 were approved and 2 were denied. And finally, a total of 1,031 existing market rate units were acquired for conversion to middle-income housing across 5 different housing developments. These units will be deed restricted for a period of 30 years for households earning between 80% to 120% of the area median income as a part of said acquisition. The city's 5th cycle regional housing needs allocation was 4,175 housing units across all income categories. The city issued building permits. I have clicks here. The city issued building permits for a total of 2,299 units across all income categories between 2013 and 2021. The city's 5th cycle RHNA requirement for the very low, and moderate income categories was 2,566 units, of which the city permitted a total of 384 units in those income categories. 107 units of the total 384 units permitted during the 5th cycle in the very low, and moderate income categories were permitted in 2021 alone. The 5th cycle RHNA requirement for the above moderate income category was 1,609 units. The city permitted a total of 1,915 units in the above moderate income category, exceeding the above moderate number by 306 units. The total number of outstanding units for the 5th cycle RHNA allocation is 2,182 units across the very low, and moderate income categories. Entitled units in 2021, so as noted, only building permits count towards the purpose of meeting RHNA. However, in 2021, the city entitled a total of 825 housing units. Of those 825 units, 167 are in the very low, and moderate income categories. Of those 167 affordable units, 62 are accessory dwelling units. The remaining 658 entitled units qualify as above moderate income units. So these entitled units will count or would count toward our six cycle RHNA requirements for the city when building permits are issued, or if building permits are issued. So for context, the city's 6th cycle RHNA requirement is 9,607 units across all income categories. So next steps in this process include the housing element APR being reviewed and received by City Council on March 30th, and then subsequently submitted to the California Department of Housing and Community Development, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and the San Diego Association of Governments, HCD, OPR, and SANDAG, all by April 1st, close of business. So that concludes staff's presentation, and I am available for questions.
Thank you. Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Weiler?
Hi, thank you for the update. I'm kind of curious, and it's probably in the housing element, and I've missed it, but the number of units that we need to issue permits on to meet our RENA needs to occur in the our sixth cycle. Is that correct? And and what's the time frame on that? And then, as a follow-up, what's the repercussions if we don't happen to meet that?
So the sixth cycle RENA allocation, that's a bit redundant, but the regional housing needs allocation for the sixth cycle is the 9,607 number, and for the fifth cycle it was 4,100 and change, so it was quite different. The sixth cycle technically began in April of 2021. However, we are still working to certify our housing element. So for the purposes of this annual progress report, we are reporting on the current certified housing element per direction from HCD staff.
Okay.
Which is the fifth, correct?
Which is the fifth. And so not meeting a RENA requirement, there's quite a bit of, I think, caveats on how it's not met, but when there's a best faith effort, when it comes to issuance of building permits, that's kind of how the cards lie. For RENA purposes, you have to plan, you have to zone accordingly for that density, but there isn't at this point, unless Director Feinstone has any, when it comes to the actual construction of those units, it's the planning that's state mandated.
So actually issuing permits isn't the mandate, it's providing the ability to develop those units.
Correct. I mean,
Okay.
development is really it. Below market rate development does have some public assistance to it, but development of market rate units, that's purely driven by the financial markets. And if developers aren't building, then there's nothing the city is going to be able to do to get 9,600 units.
And as long as we've done we continue to update the housing element and implement those strategies that are in there, then there's really no repercussions from the state. In other words, we're putting forth our best effort, but the market's going to do what it's going to do, and we can't control that.
Yeah, and we see it as a collaborative effort with us and between us and HCD in order to achieve the housing needs and help assist the state and the local area, the region with getting there.
So if I may ask, then the targets that are set then is truly through a negotiated conversation with HCD?
So HCD assigns a certain number of units to each county or each coalition of governments. SANDAG, I think in the San Diego region, we had something like 170,000 units, and Escondido was lucky enough to get 9,600 of those put on our plate. So,
okay. Questions? Other questions, comments? Commissioner Paul?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Commissioner Paul.
Okay, so you mentioned that the sixth cycle still isn't approved. We're not holding that up, right?
No, so staff is working with HCD to ensure that we are working on a compliant document. There's just quite a bit of administrative work that goes into it, including long turnaround times from HCD. So staff is currently working to revise the draft housing element based on HCD's last round of comments. So it's not, we are proactively working toward getting that document certified, yes.
Oh, but it is in our lap. We are the ones working on it.
We are currently working on it, yes.
So do you have a schedule when the next round is going to be submitted?
Senior Planner Morones and I were talking about this yesterday, in fact, and our intent is hopefully to get something out for public review and then have something into HCD after having our public review internally by the end of May, I think is where we were aiming at for having something submitted to them. We also, in our discussion, we had a call yesterday with our representative from HCD, and we discussed the idea of providing and having kind of some feedback on what the issues that they had laid out in their letter to us back in August of last year, to have that discussion and maybe provide them with some draft text before they were going to look at reviewing the entire document, so that we don't go through a full review with them that might take 60 days or 59 days, whatever their deadline is, and then have to do it again. So.
Oh, okay. And then just a couple more questions. Karen Newell would normally be here for this, right? To help you with this presentation?
I don't know in years past if she had or not. I wasn't at the meeting last year when we did the presentation on this. She's not with us anymore, though. So.
Oh, right. So that's what I was going to ask: is Holly Nelson going to be?
Well, Holly is. She is our Housing and Neighborhood Services Manager. She is out of town this week. So I hadn't discussed with her the potential of being here and available for this meeting. I think it makes a lot of sense. So in the future, that's something that I know that we should be looking at. I know Veronica did talk with her extensively on this in the preparation of the report. So
that's what I thought. Okay. And then the last one is, you kind of caught me by surprise when you said there were 5 short-term rent reviews approved and 2 were denied. I missed that. Do you know why they were denied? I mean, does that mean they're going to do the long form, or?
Those are great questions, and unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that, but I'm happy to follow up with you. I can talk with Housing and Neighborhood Services staff to get that answer for you.
Yeah, if you would let me know, or at least let me know the dates that they went in the city council, and I'll look them up myself, the meetings, to see what happened. Because I try to pay attention to that, and I apparently missed it. Thank you very much. Otherwise, great report.
Commissioner Doan?
I had a few questions, but my first 2 questions were answered by mirror what Commissioner Paul asked, so thank you so much. The other question I had was 2 questions. So the HCD assigned Escondido 96,000 unit to complete. How long do we have that assignment, and when do we need it done? The reason why I ask is recently the governor issued a final budget call for additional housing for California. I mean, a lot more. And the HCD had put out some information that, the housing need, keep Californian resident in their home, making sure that they have affordable housing. So that echoed in my head, and I said, excellent, that's we have to take care of the city of Escondido residents, making sure we have enough housing, affordable housing, or however housing for our resident here in Escondido. But if I'm looking at the 6th cycle, it's supposed to start 2021, but we're currently not doing that. So, and I know the city of Escondido staff working very, very hard. I am not doubting of anything. But it just kind of worries when, our governor said, hey, housing, and HCD said, making sure we keep everybody have a house, to live in and continue building and affordable housing, more funding coming. But our city, we need to grab that opportunity and see what we can do for the city of Escondido. That's my comments.
So one thing I guess I would say is, part of my ideology is that we need to get that document done, but even more so, we need to be producing housing. And I think we've done a pretty darn good job over the last few years of doing so, and including of the very low and moderate income units, as we did this past year. I think we had 107 of our 400 and change. So 25% of our units that we issued building permits for this last year were affordable housing units. I think it's really important to look at the progress we're making in addition to the needing to get that document done.
So just to clarify, do you have any more questions?
I'm done, thank
Okay.
you.
So just to clarify then, so but when you say submit to HCD, that would be, that's just the annual report for 21, right? So
That is just
that's
the
not
house.
related to the sixth cycle proposed or whatever? Okay.
Technically, it is not reporting on any of the sixth cycle
Right.
at this point in time.
Right.
Yes, so it's just the report that goes to the HCD and Sandag and
You're
OPR.
suggesting that end of May might be possible to have the current sixth cycle plan submitted?
It would be a draft that we would be submitting to HCD for their review,
Okay.
correct?
Great, thank you.
And just to clarify, the housing element APR, the annual progress report, is a different document type than the housing element itself.
Right, oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It's a big difference, actually.
And just so I make sure I'm understanding this correctly, so the housing element, you know, it was approved by city council. Was it certified by HCD?
Not at this time.
Okay, so that's a part of what's going on right now is the discussion with HCD. So that leads to my question, is this just administrative changes and cleanup type of thing and it doesn't have to come back to Planning Commission or City Council? Or does the final document have to come back to us again?
It'll have to return because we'll be making changes, text changes, content changes to the document, so it will need to be amended and readopted.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Probably towards the end of March or early April, we would see that.
Well, that's about right now, so.
Oh, yeah, that's correct. A little bit later then, perhaps. All right. Any other questions, comments? No? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It was very well done. Oral communications? None? Okay. And planning commissioners, any random comments, thoughts, observations? Commissioner Paul?
Yes, I want to apologize for forgetting the candy. I will not let this happen again.
Okay. Anything else? No? Director's report.
Thank you, Chair Barbet. So I did want to just make a couple announcements. One, we will not be meeting on the 12th of April. Next meeting will be the 26th. Don't have a formalized agenda yet, but I believe there'll be at least one or two items there. And then also this is the last meeting for the two commissioners who happen to not be here tonight. So last meeting was the last meeting for those two commissioners, for Vice Chair Rainey and Commissioner Serrato. Their terms expire at the end of this month, and neither have applied to re-up. Commissioner Ramirez's term as well expires, and she's going to be, I'm guessing you're going to be before the council for interview next week. So good luck. And we'll have two new commissioners coming on board, at least two and potentially three, depending, when we meet again in April. So that's what we got as far as an update, and looking forward to some new individuals joining us. There were a few commissioners who came in midterm.
Garcia he went onwards to, and that's when Hermie took that one. Okay, well, thank you very much, and just very warm thanks to Commissioner Rodriguez, given that we don't know if you're going to be back, but we certainly hope you will, and we'll certainly reach out to Nathan and Ingrid to say thank you as well.
Commissioner Barbe?
Yes.
We do have a request to speak from the audience.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
I wasn't going to speak because I thought it wasn't going to go so quickly, but my name is Adrienne Cisneros Seligman. I work for Supervisor Jim Desmond, and he sends his regards. And we're looking forward to understanding more about Escondido now that we are, or I guess Escondido is now in his District 5. And didn't bring my cards, which I wanted to, but I just wanted to be able to reach out to you, and I will be attending meetings here with some of my colleagues, and I just want you to know that we are very much in favor of helping and serving our constituents here. And I know Supervisor Jim Desmond is very much for not all the pollution, and he prefers breathing clean air. He was a pilot, as you know, an engineer by trade, and he is very much for a new technology in our travels. Let's just put it that way. He was a pilot for about 30 years, and he told me, he goes, you know, Adrian, he goes, with this whole automatic driving thing going on, he goes, we did that for 30 years when I was piloting. He goes, we should be able to do something like that on the ground. So just want you to know we're all here working together, and we're very much, Supervisor Jim Desmond is very much a people and wants to serve the people of Escondido. So we're very excited, and hopefully we can learn a lot of what's going on and help prioritize, I guess, the situations as they come along. And I know homelessness is something that we all want. So that's it. If anybody has any questions or anything.
Any questions?
And I think I met some, I don't know if I've seen, Kate, you're the only one that I think I know. I remember you from, I used to, not to talk about me, but I used to be on the board of the Escondido Community Child Care Centers. I don't know if you remember Lorraine Boyce and Dr. Boyce. So I worked with those folks for many, many years.
Sure, I know Cece well. Right. Cece.
Oh, Cece Lusky. Yep, we both served together.
Right. So some of the previous supervisors have been really great with the neighborhood revitalization money, or whatever those grants are called, for some of our local parks. So that I would say I'll talk to Jim any day of the week about some money for some of our parks.
Well, maybe we can schedule a meeting, and we'd love to do that because...
Yeah. rickpaul01@yahoo.com.
Okay. Okay, yeah, because I know on those dollars, if we don't use them, we lose them in June. So...
Great to meet you.
We can talk next week.
Great to meet you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Weiler.
You know what, when you asked for comments from commissioners, and I just remembered one thing. The Escondido Chamber of Commerce, now called the Greater Escondido Chamber of Commerce, they are holding a transportation expo. It'll be, and the reason I thought about this is because we're not having a meeting on April 12th, but they'll have that transportation expo on April 23rd. It's a Saturday, and I believe it's going to be down at the Westfield Mall. So just want to let you know if you have any interest in that and who might be going to that, just reach out to me, and I can put you in touch with the people over at the chamber, and they can explain everything that's going on. But it's really promoting a lot of the green technology for transportation. So I think it'll be a very interesting exposition, and hopefully we get a lot of people, and it starts to grow over time, and highlight what businesses are doing in Escondido. Not only from the vehicles, but from the components that go into these vehicles. So it should be a real good turnout. So I just want to let everybody know that that's what's coming up on April 23rd.
And it's also on the city website, and I believe they ask you to register. It's not just sort of walk in, but I think, maybe that's erroneous, but that's what it said on the website.
Yeah, they like to have you register just so they kind of can anticipate how many people are going to be there, for a lot of various reasons, make sure there's enough trash containers, security, or whatever else, so that they can accommodate and get people on and off the site in a safe manner.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to mention that in case folks actually wanted to go. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice evening. This meeting is adjourned.